The last thing I saw before I fell 200 feet was my husband's face. Not horror, not panic, just cold calculation. Like he was watching a stock price drop instead of his pregnant wife plummeting to her death. But here's the thing nobody expected. I didn't die. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how I survived a 200-foot fall while 6 months pregnant, discovered my billionaire husband's $3 million embezzlement scheme, and watched him plan my funeral while I was still breathing. This is a story about a man who thought murder was cheaper than divorce, a mistress who turned out to be a serial killer, and a prenuptial agreement I never actually signed. By the time this is over, you'll understand why some betrayals are worth $200 million and why the most dangerous moment in a marriage isn't the wedding. It's when you become inconvenient. Stay with me because this story has 3 peaks of despair and we're just getting started. My husband's face was the last thing I saw before I fell. Not horror, not panic, just calculation. Like he was watching a stock price drop. That's when I knew this wasn't an accident. This was an exit strategy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what I should have seen coming. 3 months earlier, I sat in our Denver penthouse, 6 months pregnant, staring at a prenuptial agreement I didn't remember signing. My name was there, Emily Carter Hale, but the signature looked wrong, too smooth, too confident, nothing like my usual scrawl. "Babe, you okay?" Ryan appeared in the doorway, his $5,000 suit perfectly pressed. Everything about Ryan Hale was perfect. Too perfect. "I don't remember signing this," I said, holding up the document. He kissed my forehead. The gesture felt rehearsed. "Pregnancy brain. Dr. Matthews said it's normal to forget things." Matthews, another name on Ryan's payroll. I was a paralegal at Morrison and Associates, one of Denver's top family law firms. I spent my days helping women recognize the signs of financial abuse. Document everything, I'd tell them. Trust your gut. Get copies of everything before you leave. Looking back, I see the irony now. I couldn't see what was happening in my own marriage. Ryan owned Hale Properties, a commercial real estate empire worth $200 million. We lived in a penthouse with mountain views. I drove a Tesla, wore designer maternity clothes. From the outside, I had everything. But money doesn't buy safety. Sometimes it funds your murder. The signs were there. God, they were everywhere. Ryan insisting I quit my job at 6 months pregnant. The new life insurance policy, $5 million, that he said was for the baby's future. Sierra Quinn, his project manager, texting him at 2 in the morning about urgent closings. My best friend Madison warned me. "He's different, Em. Cold. Have you noticed?" I had noticed, but I was 6 months pregnant, exhausted, and stupid enough to think marriage vows meant something. The morning of our anniversary, Ryan surprised me. "Let's go to Red Canyon, like our honeymoon. Just us." Red flags? Girl, these were red billboards. But there I was, 6 months pregnant, climbing into his Range Rover, believing a man who forgot my birthday might suddenly become romantic. Spoiler alert, he didn't. The drive took 2 hours. Ryan was unusually attentive, kept touching my hand, asking if I was comfortable. It felt wrong. Like a performance. He parked at a restricted trailhead. No cameras. I noticed that immediately. My paralegal brain kicked in. Why here? Why now? Why a trail nobody uses? "Ready?" Ryan asked, helping me out of the car. The Colorado sun hung low on the horizon, painting Red Canyon in shades of gold and crimson. It was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes you forget danger exists. We started walking. The trail was narrow, hugging the cliff edge. My boots crunched on gravel. Wind tugged at my jacket. I kept one hand on my belly, protective. "Ryan," I said, stopping suddenly, "why are we really here?" He turned, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes, something cold. Then it vanished, replaced by his practiced smile. Can a husband want to spend time with his pregnant wife? That's when I heard footsteps behind us. Sierra Quinn appeared around the bend, dressed in fitted hiking gear that looked more like a photo shoot than actual outdoor clothing. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was sharp. "What a coincidence," she said brightly, "running into you two up here." My stomach dropped, not from morning sickness, from certainty. This wasn't a coincidence. Nothing about this was coincidence. I looked at Ryan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Sierra, what are you doing here? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Needed some fresh air. She stepped closer. Thought I'd hike before dinner. On a restricted trail, 2 hours from Denver? I turned to Ryan. You knew she'd be here. He shrugged. No denial, no explanation, just a shrug. That's when I remembered. His phone. He'd left it in the car while getting our water bottles. I'd seen it light up with a text. Just a glimpse, but enough. Today, make it look accidental. I'll be there. My paralegal training kicked in. The life insurance policy, the new prenup, Sierra's texts, Ryan's coldness, it all clicked together like evidence in a case file. They were going to kill me. Here, today, on this cliff, and they were going to make it look like an accident. I know, I said quietly. My hand instinctively moved to protect my belly. I know what you're planning. Ryan's face remained blank. Sierra tilted her head, studying me like I was a problem to solve. Emily, you're paranoid, Ryan said. His voice was calm, too calm. The pregnancy hormones are making you... I saw your phone, I interrupted. The texts, the insurance documents, all of it. A universal truth about betrayal. The moment you voice it out loud, you can't take it back. You force everyone to choose sides. Sometimes that clarity is the most dangerous thing of all. Sierra laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Emily, always playing detective. Ryan said you'd make this difficult. Difficult? My voice rose. You're planning to murder me and my baby for money. For freedom, Ryan corrected. He stepped closer to the cliff edge, and I realized with growing horror that he was positioning himself, blocking any path back down the trail. You were always the obstacle, Emily. The prenup protects you, but it also traps me. But if you die, accidental death, I get everything. The company goes public. Sierra and I move forward. Clean. You're insane. I backed up, but Sierra moved behind me. They were coordinating. They'd planned this. I'm practical, Ryan said. The company's going public in 3 weeks. $200 million deal. But investors want stability. A devoted family man, not a divorced CEO with a bitter ex-wife who knows about his embezzlement. There it was, the real reason. You stole from your own company, I said. That's what this is about. I found the transfers last month. I was going to report you. Ryan's jaw tightened. You should have kept your mouth shut. How much? I asked, stalling. My mind raced through options. The trail behind me was narrow. Sierra blocked it. Ryan blocked the front. To my left was the cliff edge, a 200-foot drop into Red Canyon. $3 million, Ryan said casually. Needed to cover some bad investments. The IPO covers it, but only if there are no complications. You and that baby? Your complications. Sierra moved closer. I could smell her perfume. Expensive. Probably bought with Ryan's stolen money. Step toward the edge, Emily, she said softly. Make this easy. No. Then we'll make it hard. Everything happened fast. Sierra grabbed my arm. I twisted away, but she was stronger than I expected. Her other hand shoved my shoulder. Hard. I stumbled backward. My foot caught on loose gravel. I saw Ryan's face, calm and calculating. I saw Sierra smile. I saw the sky tilt. Then I was falling. My scream echoed across the canyon. Time slowed. I twisted my body, protecting my belly. My hands shot out, grasping at air. At rock, at anything. My fingers caught a branch jutting from the cliff face. Pain exploded through my shoulder as my full weight yanked against the wood. The branch bent but held. I dangled 200 feet above the canyon floor. My legs kicked at empty air. My other hand scrambled for purchase on the rock face, finding none. Ryan, I screamed, help me, please. He appeared at the edge above me. For one heartbeat, I thought he'd save me. Thought he'd remember we were married, that I carried his daughter. He just stood there, watching. Ryan, the baby. My voice cracked. Your daughter. His expression didn't change. Goodbye, Emily. Thanks for the payout. Those words, those exact words, they burned into my brain with crystal clarity. He turned to Sierra. Make sure she doesn't survive. Push harder if you have to. Then they walked away. I hung there, fingers burning, shoulder screaming, belly cramping with stress. Below me, the canyon floor waited. Above me, the sky darkened as clouds moved across the sun. 47 minutes. That's how long I hung there. Long enough for my fingers to go numb. Long enough to feel my daughter kick as if asking why mommy put her in danger. Long enough to understand that my husband wanted us dead, but also long enough to get angry, furiously, righteously angry. I wasn't going to die here. I wasn't going to let Ryan win. I wasn't going to let my daughter's last moment be her mother giving up. I used my pregnancy weight to swing toward a narrower ledge to my right. My feet found a small outcropping of rock. Not much, but enough to take some pressure off my hands. I ripped my scarf off with my teeth and tied it around the branch, creating a makeshift anchor. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Hold on, baby girl," I whispered to my belly. "Mommy's going to fight." And then I heard it, a voice from above. "Hey, hey, hang on, I'm coming down." Not Ryan, a woman's voice. Strong, commanding. Help was coming. I just had to hold on a little longer. Sarah Morrison rappelled down that cliff like gravity was optional. She was in her 40s, built solid, moving with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Her park ranger uniform stretched tight across muscular shoulders as she descended. "I've got you," she called down. "Don't move. Let me do the work." "My baby," I gasped. The branch was splitting. I could hear it cracking. "We're saving both of you. Just breathe." When she reached me, she clipped a harness around my chest with quick, efficient movements. Her hands were steady, professional. "On 3, I need you to let go of the branch," she said. "I've got you secured. The rope will hold. Trust me." Trust. That word felt impossible, but the branch was failing. I could feel it giving way. I had no choice. 1, 2, 3. I released my grip. For one terrifying second, I dropped. Then the harness caught. Sarah's arm wrapped around me, solid and real. "I've got you," she repeated. "You're safe now." We ascended slowly. My body shook uncontrollably. Every muscle screamed. But I was alive. My baby was alive. When we reached the top, Sarah lowered me onto solid ground. I collapsed immediately, hands pressed to my belly. "Is she okay? Is my baby okay?" Sarah pulled out a portable fetal Doppler from her emergency kit. Within seconds, the rapid rhythm of my daughter's heartbeat filled the air. Strong, steady, alive. I sobbed. The sound ripped out of me, raw and broken. "Helicopter's coming," Sarah said gently. "We're getting you to Denver General. You and your baby are going to be fine." "My husband?" I gasped out. "He pushed me. He and his mistress. They tried to kill her." "Tell us." Sarah's face hardened. "Tell me everything in the helicopter." "Right now, we focus on getting you stabilized." The medevac arrived within minutes. As they loaded me onto the stretcher, I grabbed Sarah's arm. "He'll try again. When he finds out I survived. He'll try again." "Not if I have anything to say about it." Sarah's voice was granite. "I'm former Army medic, current park ranger, and extremely good at protecting people who need it. You're not alone anymore, Emily." The hospital was chaos. Bright lights, urgent voices, machines beeping, doctors speaking in medical shorthand. I couldn't follow. My body felt distant, like I was watching everything happen to someone else. "Baby's in distress," someone said. Heartbeats dropping. Panic seized me. "No, no, please." "We're stabilizing her," a doctor assured me. "Mrs. Hale, you need to stay calm. Stress hormones affect your baby. Breathe." I tried, I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's face. Calm, calculating, watching me die. They admitted me to the ICU. Private room. Police guard outside the door. Sarah had insisted, and for once, bureaucracy moved fast. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Medications, exhaustion, trauma. Everything blurred together, until I heard the television someone had left on. In a heartbreaking press conference today, Denver businessman Ryan Hale spoke about the tragic loss of his pregnant wife, Emily Carter Hale, who fell to her death during a hiking accident at Red Canyon. My eyes snapped open. On the screen, Ryan stood before a cluster of microphones, looking devastated. His eyes were red. His voice broke at all the right moments. Emily was everything to me, he said. She was carrying our daughter. I tried to save her, but she slipped. I watched her fall. I'll never forgive myself. Sierra Quinn stood beside him, tears streaming down her perfect makeup. Her hand rested on his shoulder in a gesture of comfort that made me want to vomit. Emily was like a sister to me, Sierra sobbed. She'd been struggling. The pregnancy was hard on her mentally. I wish we could have done more. They were staging my death. While I lay in a hospital bed fighting to keep my baby alive, they were telling the world I was dead. And worse, they were painting me as unstable, suicidal, making sure if I survived and spoke up, nobody would believe me. A nurse walked in, saw me awake, and immediately moved to the TV. Mrs. Hale, you shouldn't be watching. Leave it, I said. My voice sounded hollow. I need to see this. The news cut to a memorial service announcement. White flowers, somber music, my own photograph staring back at me from the screen. A celebration of Emily Hale's life will be held Friday at Riverside Chapel. The family requests privacy during this difficult time. Friday, 2 days away. My husband was planning my funeral while I was still breathing. The nurse turned off the TV, but the damage was done. I stared at the ceiling, processing the magnitude of what Ryan had done. He hadn't just tried to kill me. He was erasing me, and everyone believed him. Sarah Morrison stood in my hospital doorway, arms crossed, face grim. We have a problem. Just one? I tried to laugh, but it came out as a broken sound. She entered, closing the door behind her. The hospital received a request from Ryan's lawyers. They want to see you to confirm your condition for the insurance claim. Ice flooded my veins. He's already filing the claim. $5 million payout requires a body or medical confirmation of death. Sarah sat beside my bed. Emily, legally speaking, you died yesterday at Red Canyon. No rescue was officially recorded. I found you off duty on a restricted trail. By the time I called it in, you were listed as a fatality. How is that possible? Ryan's lawyers filed paperwork fast, really fast. They have witnesses who say they saw you jump. They have your supposed mental health records claiming pregnancy depression. They've built a narrative where you're already gone. My mind raced. But I'm alive. I'm right here. For now, so Sarah leaned forward. If they see you're alive, what do you think happens? Ryan doesn't get his payout. His company deal falls through, and suddenly you're a loose end he needs to tie up permanently. A thought crystallized. I stay dead. It's dangerous, Sarah warned, but it gives us time. Time to investigate, time to build a case, time to protect you and your baby. How would it even work? My ex-husband is a retired detective, Marcus Webb. We don't exactly get along, but he owes me. And he's got connections with people who specialize in making people disappear when they need to. The irony wasn't lost on me. My husband tried to make me disappear through murder. Now I was choosing to disappear to survive. If I stay dead, I can't contact anyone, can't see my family, can't work. The reality sank in. I'll lose everything. Ryan already took everything, Sarah said gently. This way, you get to take it back on your terms. I looked down at my belly. My daughter kicked, a small flutter of life. She deserved better than a dead mother and a murderous father. Do it, I said. Make me disappear. Within 24 hours, I was gone, officially deceased. A quiet funeral planned. My family, what little I had left, would mourn a daughter who wasn't actually dead. Sarah moved me to a cabin in Aspen. Remote, off-grid, owned by Marcus Webb, her ex-husband, who turned out to be surprisingly helpful for someone she claimed to hate. Marcus was 50, graying, weathered in that way men get when they've seen too much darkness. He'd spent 30 years in homicide before retiring to the mountains. Ground rules, he said, setting groceries on the cabin's kitchen counter. No phone calls, no internet without VPN, no contact with anyone from your old life. You're a ghost. I'm a paralegal, I countered. I know how to research, how to build a case. Let me help. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. She's got skills, Sarah said. Might as well use them. That's how I became a detective in my own attempted murder case. Marcus brought me files, bank records, corporate documents, anything related to Ryan's business. I spent hours hunched over his kitchen table, 7 months pregnant, piecing together the evidence of my husband's crimes. The embezzlement was obvious once I knew what to look for. Ryan had been siphoning money from Hale Properties for 18 months, small amounts at first, then larger chunks, 3 million total. But the real discovery came when I cross-referenced Sierra Quinn's background. Marcus, I called out one evening, you need to see this. He appeared from the other room, coffee in hand. What have you got? I pointed to the screen. Sierra's last boyfriend, Daniel Crawford, died 2 years ago in a boating accident. She inherited everything, $2 million. Accidents happen. Except the insurance investigator flagged it as suspicious. No body recovered. Witnesses said Sierra was on the boat when it exploded, but she somehow survived without a scratch. I pulled up another file. Before that, she was engaged to a man in Texas, Robert Marsh, died in a house fire. She inherited again. Marcus set down his coffee slowly. How many? 3 that I can find, maybe more. Well, I looked up at him. Sierra Quinn isn't just Ryan's mistress. She's a black widow. She finds wealthy men, gets close, and eliminates them for the inheritance. And Ryan thought he could control her. Marcus shook his head. Idiot. She probably planned to kill him next after you were gone. The pieces were falling into place, but evidence and proof were different things. We needed more. That's when Sarah brought in Lisa Mitchell, a civil attorney who specialized in financial crimes, and Diane Harper, a private investigator who owed Sarah a favor from her Army days. We formed a team, 5 people in a remote cabin, building a case against a man who thought he had already won. My daughter kicked constantly now, as if reminding me why I was doing this. Not for revenge, for justice, for her future. But late at night, when everyone else slept, I'd stand at the cabin window and watch news footage of my own memorial service. Ryan crying at the podium, Sierra comforting him, friends and colleagues offering the condolences. Nobody questioning the narrative. Nobody wondering if maybe, just maybe, the perfect grieving husband was actually a murderer. Watching your own funeral is surreal. Watching your murderer cry over your coffin is enraging. I pressed my hand to the cold window. I'm coming for you, I whispered. Both of you. And when I do, the whole world will know what you did. 3 weeks after my death, the case began to solidify. We had documents, testimonies, and a trail of financial crimes that would make any prosecutor salivate. But we needed the physical evidence. The smoking gun. Got something, Diane Harper announced, bursting into the cabin with her laptop. The private investigator had been working contacts in the state police. Forensics from the cliff scene. We gathered around the kitchen table. Diane opened files showing photographs of the trail where I'd fallen. They found fabric fragments on a rock outcropping, she said. Torn material consistent with a struggle. And look at this. She zoomed in on a photo showing distinct shoe prints in the dirt. 2 sets of footprints, both approaching the edge, then scuff marks indicating a push, not a slip. That's evidence of foul play, Lisa Mitchell said. The attorney leaned closer, studying the images. But can we connect those prints to Sierra? Already did. Diane pulled up another file. Sierra's hiking boots, purchased 3 days before the incident. Sole pattern matches perfectly. And here's the best part. When Emily grabbed Sierra's jacket, she ripped it. We found threads embedded under Emily's fingernails at the hospital. DNA matched to Sierra's jacket. Marcus nodded slowly. That's solid. What about Ryan? His cell phone GPS puts him at the exact location at the time of the incident. Diane smiled grimly. He was standing 10 feet away when Sierra pushed Emily, and his phone was actively texting Sierra right before they arrived. I stared at the evidence laid out before me. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Undeniable proof of everything I'd survived. There's more, Diane continued. A hiker on an adjacent trail heard screaming. He recorded it on his phone, thought it was an animal at first, but the audio's clear. A woman begging for help, and a male voice saying, "Let her fall." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. For the first time since the cliff, I felt something besides fear and rage. I felt hope. "We take this to the DA," Lisa said. Build the case for attempted murder. And the embezzlement, I asked. That's your leverage. Lisa tapped the financial documents I'd compiled. Ryan needs that IPO to cover his theft. If investors find out he embezzled $3 million, the deal collapses. His entire empire collapses. Marcus stood pacing. We need to be strategic. If we move too fast, Ryan's lawyers will bury this in motions. But if we wait too long, he completes the IPO and disappears with the money, I finished. We have a narrow window. The plan formed over the next several hours. File charges simultaneously, attempted murder and embezzlement. Hit Ryan from both sides. Make it impossible for him to fight both battles at once. When do we move? Sarah asked. Lisa checked her calendar. The IPO closes in 1 week. We file charges in 3 days. Give them no time to prepare. No time to spin the narrative. And Emily? Marcus looked at me. You ready for this? Once we file, you become the target again. Ryan will know you're alive. He'll come for you. Was I ready? I was 8 months pregnant, living in hiding, about to publicly resurrect from the dead to accuse my husband of trying to murder me. I've been ready since I pulled myself off that cliff, I said. Let's destroy him. The next 72 hours were a blur. Lisa filed the charges with the district attorney. Diane delivered evidence packages to the state police. Marcus coordinated with former colleagues to ensure the case couldn't be buried. And me? I prepared for the moment I'd step back into the world. The moment I'd look Ryan in the eyes and watch his carefully constructed lies crumble. 3 days later, the news broke. Arrest warrants issued for Ryan Hale and Sierra Quinn in connection with attempted murder and fraud charges. Sources say new evidence suggests Emily Hale may have survived the fall and is cooperating with investigators. I watched the broadcast from the cabin. Ryan's shocked face flashed across the screen as reporters ambushed him outside his office building. This is absurd, he sputtered. My wife died. This is someone trying to extort money from me during my grief. But his voice shook. His confidence wavered. He knew. Somewhere in that moment, Ryan Hale realized his perfect plan had failed. Within hours, police attempted to execute the warrants, but Ryan and Sierra had disappeared. They ran, Marcus said, hanging up his phone. Police went to Ryan's penthouse and Sierra's condo, both empty, cleaned out. Where would they go? Sarah asked. I knew. Ryan has a property in Utah, remote. He bought it under an LLC 3 years ago. Told me it was an investment, but I always thought it was strange. Off-grid cabin in the mountains. Marcus was already dialing. Sending units now. They won't surrender easily, I said quietly. The reality of it sank in. Ryan was running, which meant he was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. For the first time since this began, I was genuinely afraid. Not for myself, for what Ryan might do when cornered, for the violence he might unleash rather than face justice. The manhunt had begun, and somewhere out there my attempted murderer was planning his next move. The black SUV tore through the Utah mountains at midnight, headlights cutting through darkness. Inside, Ryan Hale gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles glowed white. Sierra Quinn sat in the passenger seat, makeup smeared, breathing shallow and panicked. She's alive, Sierra whispered for the 100th time. How is she alive? We watched her fall. Ryan's jaw clenched. Shut up. Let me think. Think. The police have warrants. They have evidence. What is there to think about? Ryan slammed his palm against the steering wheel. The crack echoed through the vehicle. She should have died. That fall should have killed her. Miles behind them, a coordinated effort was underway. State police had issued APBs across Colorado and Utah. The FBI had joined because of the financial crimes. Airports were monitored. Border crossings watched. Ryan Hale and Sierra Quinn were running out of places to hide. In the cabin in Aspen, I watched the news coverage with grim satisfaction. Every channel showed the same images. Ryan's Range Rover spotted on traffic cameras heading west. Sierra's panicked face captured by a gas station security camera. They're heading for Mexico, Marcus said, studying the map. Probably planning to cross at Nogales. It's remote enough. Will they make it? I asked. Not a chance, he pointed to the tracking data. Border Patrol's been alerted. They won't get within 50 miles. Sarah entered with fresh coffee. How are you feeling? Like I'm watching karma work in real time. I shifted uncomfortably. 8 months pregnant and living on adrenaline was taking its toll. Is it wrong that I'm enjoying this? After what they did, Sarah shook her head. You're allowed to feel however you want. The television switched to breaking news. We're receiving reports that Ryan Hale's vehicle has been spotted at a remote gas station near the Utah-Arizona border. Police units are converging on the location. We'll bring you updates as the feed cut to aerial footage. A helicopter spotlight illuminated a small gas station in the middle of nowhere. Two police cruisers screamed into the parking lot, lights blazing. Ryan burst from the SUV, running. Sierra stumbled out after him, hands raised, screaming something the cameras couldn't capture. It was over in seconds. Officers swarmed them. Ryan went down hard, face first against the pavement. Sierra collapsed, sobbing hysterically. The camera zoomed in on Ryan's face as they cuffed him. For just a moment, he looked directly at the helicopter camera. His expression wasn't fear. It was pure, undiluted rage. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read his lips clearly. You're dead. A chill ran through me. Even caught, even arrested, Ryan still thought he had power over me. He can't hurt you anymore, Sarah said quietly. She'd seen it too, but we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Ryan's money could buy lawyers. Good lawyers. The kind who turned slam-dunk cases into acquittals. The real fight was just beginning. The next morning, Ryan and Sierra were arraigned via video link. Both pleaded not guilty. Ryan's attorney, a shark named Bradford from Denver's most expensive firm, immediately began filing motions. Motion to suppress evidence obtained through illegal surveillance. Motion to dismiss based on prosecutorial misconduct. Motion to... Marcus read the list and whistled. They're throwing everything at the wall. Will any of it stick? I asked. Lisa Mitchell sat across from me, reviewing documents. Some might. The text messages might be inadmissible if we can't prove proper chain of custody. The GPS data could be challenged as circumstantial. Bradford's good. He knows how to create reasonable doubt. My stomach dropped. So they might walk? Not if you testify. Lisa looked up. Emily, you're the key witness. You lived through it. Your testimony, combined with the physical evidence, creates a narrative no jury can ignore. But that means you have to testify. In public, in court, with Ryan watching. The thought terrified me. Standing in a courtroom, visibly pregnant, facing the man who tried to murder me and our daughter, telling our story while he stared at me with those cold, calculating eyes. But what choice did I have? I'll do it, I said, whatever it takes. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later, enough time for both sides to prepare, enough time for Ryan's legal team to try to dismantle the case, and enough time for me to realize just how vulnerable I still was. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was resting in the cabin when my daughter kicked harder than usual. Not playful kicks, painful ones. Something felt wrong. Sarah, I called out. Something's wrong with the baby. She rushed in, saw my face, and immediately called for an ambulance. Hospital, now. The drive to Denver General felt endless. Every bump in the road sent pain shooting through my belly. My daughter's movements had gone from frantic to eerily still. Stay with me, baby girl, I whispered. Please stay with me. At the hospital, doctors swarmed, monitors, ultrasounds, urgent conversations, and medical terminology I couldn't parse. Finally, a doctor turned to me. The baby's in distress. The stress from recent events has triggered early labor. You're at 36 weeks. We can try to stop it, but what? Fear choked me. But if we can't, you'll give birth prematurely, and given your injuries from the fall, there are risks. I made a decision in that moment, a universal truth that every mother understands. You'll sacrifice anything for your child. Your safety, your comfort, your life. Save my baby, I said. Whatever it takes, save her. They admitted me immediately, put me on medications to stop labor, monitored my daughter's heartbeat continuously. For 3 days, I lay in that hospital bed, fighting to keep my daughter inside me just a little longer, fighting to give her every possible advantage. And that's when Bradford, Ryan's lawyer, tried his first major play. A nurse entered my room nervously. Mrs. Hale, there's a man here to see you. He says he's your attorney? I hadn't hired an attorney yet. What's his name? Robert Bradford, Ryan's lawyer, here, in my hospital room. Absolutely not, Sarah said from the corner. She'd been living in the hospital basically since I was admitted. He doesn't get near her. But Bradford appeared in the doorway anyway. Expensive suit and practiced smile. Mrs. Hale, I'm here on behalf of your husband. Get out, I said flatly. I have a proposal that might interest you. Drop the charges, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and Ryan will ensure you and your child are financially secure for life. It took everything in me not to scream. You mean he'll pay me to let him get away with trying to murder us? I mean he'll provide for his daughter, $10 million, no strings attached except your silence. $10 million, financial security, no trial, no testimony, no facing Ryan in court. It was tempting in the way poison is tempting when you're dying of thirst. Tell Ryan to go to hell, I said, and tell him I'm coming for everything he has, his money, his company, his freedom. All of it. Bradford's smile didn't waver. You'll regret this decision, Mrs. Hale. No, I said quietly. I regret marrying him. Everything else is justice. He left, but the message was clear. Ryan was willing to pay millions to make this go away, which meant he knew he was going to lose. That night, my daughter's heartbeat finally stabilized. Labor stopped. We'd bought ourselves another few weeks. You did good, baby girl, I whispered, hand on my belly. Now let's finish what we started. The preliminary hearing arrived like a storm. Media trucks lined the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed relentlessly. The story had captured national attention. Pregnant wife supposedly killed by billionaire husband returns from the dead to testify. I walked through that gauntlet with Sarah on one side, Marcus on the other. 8.5 months pregnant, moving slowly, but moving forward. Inside the courtroom, I saw him. Ryan sat at the defense table in a perfectly tailored suit, looking every inch the wrongfully accused businessman. When our eyes met, his expression was pure venom. Sierra sat beside him, thinner than before. Makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. She looked terrified. Good. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Henderson. The hearing began. The prosecution laid out their case. Evidence of embezzlement, phone records, GPS data, witness testimony about screams. It was damning. Then Bradford stood up for the defense. Your Honor, the prosecution's case rests on circumstantial evidence in the testimony of a woman who, by her own admission, suffered severe head trauma in a fall. Mrs. Hale's memories are unreliable. Her accusations are born of pregnancy hormones and post-traumatic stress, not facts. He was painting me as crazy, unstable, unreliable. But that wasn't even the worst part. Furthermore, we have testimony from Mrs. Hale's closest friend, Madison Pierce, that directly contradicts the prosecution's narrative. My blood froze. Madison? A woman entered the courtroom. My best friend, my maid of honor, the person who knew all my secrets. She wouldn't look at me as she took the stand. Miss Pierce, Bradford began smoothly, how long have you known Emily Hale? 15 years, since college. Would you describe her mental state in the months before the incident? Madison's voice trembled. She was struggling. The pregnancy was hard. She talked about feeling trapped, about how maybe everyone would be better off without her. No, that wasn't true. Did she ever mention wanting to harm herself? Yes, she said she thought about jumping, about just ending it all. The courtroom erupted. Judge Henderson banged her gavel, but the damage was done. My best friend had just testified that I was suicidal, that I jumped, that Ryan was innocent. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process it. Madison was lying. But why? The hearing continued, but I barely heard it. When they finally adjourned, I stumbled out of the courtroom in shock. Sarah caught me. Easy, breathe, your baby. Madison sold me out, I gasped. She lied. Why would she lie? Marcus's expression was dark. Money. Has to be. Ryan got to her somehow. But it was worse than that. We found out later that Madison had been Ryan's mistress before Sierra. Years ago, before I even met Ryan. He kept her in his back pocket, a secret weapon for exactly this moment. That night, alone in the cabin, I let myself cry. Not just about Madison's betrayal, though that cut deep, but about the realization of how thoroughly Ryan had planned this. He'd manipulated my best friend, fabricated psychological records, created a narrative where I was the crazy one and he was the victim. And worst of all, it was working. The case is falling apart, Lisa told me the next day. Her voice was gentle but honest. With Madison's testimony, we lose credibility. The jury will see a paranoid woman with pregnancy issues making false accusations. But the evidence, circumstantial. Ryan's lawyers are arguing he was at the canyon but didn't push you. That Sierra acted alone in a moment of passion. That Ryan's only crime was panicking and leaving the scene. That's not what happened. I know, but we're lawyers, not truth tellers. We deal in what we can prove beyond reasonable doubt. And right now, Madison's testimony creates that doubt. I sank into a chair, defeated. So he wins. He tried to murder me, and he wins. Not yet. Marcus entered with his laptop. We might have one more card to play, something Ryan doesn't know about. He turned the screen toward me. On it was an audio file. What is this? Remember that backup phone you had in your jacket pocket? The one you used to record meetings at work? I'd forgotten about it, a cheap burner phone I kept for recording client consultations. It was in your jacket when you fell, Marcus continued. We recovered it from evidence. And Emily, it was recording. My heart stopped. The whole thing? Every word. Sierra's push, Ryan's thanks for the payout line, him telling her to make sure she doesn't survive. All of it. The recording played. My own screams filled the cabin. Then Ryan's cold voice. Goodbye, Emily. Thanks for the payout. Clear, undeniable, damning. This changes everything, Lisa breathed. This is direct evidence. First person. Inadmissible becomes admissible because you recorded it yourself. Can we use it at trial? I asked. Better. We leak it to the media. Let the court of public opinion turn against Ryan before we even get to criminal court. It was risky, potentially illegal depending on Colorado's recording laws, but also our last best chance. Do it, I said. Let everyone hear what he did. The recording hit the news that night. Within an hour, it was viral. Every major network played it. Social media exploded. Ryan's carefully constructed victim narrative crumbled in real time. By morning, investors were pulling out of the IPO. The Board of Hale Properties voted to remove Ryan as CEO. His empire was collapsing. But cornered animals are the most dangerous. And Ryan Hale was very, very cornered. The audio recording destroyed Ryan's public image overnight, but it also made me a target. If he went down, he'd take me with him. That's what Marcus said, and that's what I believed. But I didn't expect how quickly Ryan would act. It happened 3 days after the recording leaked. I was at the cabin, 9 months pregnant now, preparing for both a trial and a birth that could come any day. Sarah had gone into town for supplies. Marcus was at the courthouse filing motions. I was alone. The first indication something was wrong came when the power cut out. Not unusual in the mountains, but the timing felt off. Then I heard gravel crunching outside, a car engine, footsteps on the porch. I grabbed my phone, but the signal was dead. Someone had jammed it. The door exploded inward, not subtly picked, just raw force destroying the lock. Sierra Quinn stood in the doorway. Her hair was wild, makeup gone, eyes hollow with something between rage and madness. She held a kitchen knife. You couldn't just stay dead, she hissed. You had to ruin everything. I backed up slowly, hands instinctively protecting my belly. Sierra, the police know you're out on bail. If you do this, I'm already going to prison. Ryan's lawyers made a deal. They're blaming everything on me, saying I pushed you while he tried to stop me. He's throwing me under the bus to save himself. So that was Bradford's new strategy. Make Sierra the villain. Paint Ryan as the desperate husband who made mistakes but didn't commit murder. So you came here to kill me yourself? I tried to keep my voice steady. That won't help you. No, but it'll feel really, really good. She lunged. I grabbed a chair, using it as a shield. The knife stabbed into the wood. Sierra yanked it free, circled me like a predator. You took everything, she snarled. Ryan was mine. The money was mine. You were supposed to die. You're a serial killer, Sierra. How many men did you murder before Ryan? 3? 4? That stopped her. How did you... Daniel Crawford. Robert Marsh. I found them all. You've been doing this for years. Marry rich men, kill them, take the insurance. Ryan was just your next mark. Sierra's laugh was broken. Ryan thought he was using me, thought I was his stupid mistress. He had no idea I was planning to kill him next after you were gone. Take everything and disappear. But I survived, and now you're going down for all of it. Then I've got nothing to lose. She charged. I threw the chair at her, stumbled backward. My pregnant body was slow, awkward. She was faster. The knife caught my arm. Pain flared hot and immediate. Blood soaked my sleeve. But pain does something to a mother protecting her child. It makes her dangerous. I grabbed a lamp from the side table, swung it with everything I had. The base connected with Sierra's temple. She went down hard, knife clattering across the floor. I didn't wait. I ran, or waddled as fast as a 9-month pregnant woman could. Out the door, down the porch steps, toward the tree line. Behind me, Sierra screamed. She was up, coming after me. I made it 20 feet before my water broke. The sensation was unmistakable. Warm fluid soaking my legs. A contraction hit immediately, doubling me over. No, I gasped. Not now, please, not now. Sierra caught up. She grabbed my hair, yanked me back. The knife pressed against my throat. Say goodbye, Emily. A gunshot cracked through the air. Sierra jerked, then dropped. Sarah Morrison stood at the cabin entrance, service weapon raised, expression lethal. U.S. Park Service, drop the weapon, now! Sierra was already on the ground, clutching her shoulder where Sarah's bullet had hit. Blood seeped between her fingers. Sarah rushed to me. Emily, oh God, you're in labor. And bleeding. I showed her my arm where Sierra had cut me. Sarah looked between my arm wound, my soaked pants, and Sierra writhing on the ground. She made a decision. Pressure on the arm. I'm calling for backup and an ambulance. You're not having this baby in the woods. But my body had other ideas. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. My daughter was coming, whether we were ready or not. The ambulance arrived in 15 minutes that felt like hours. They loaded me in, started an IV, checked the baby's vitals. Sarah rode with me, holding my hand. You fought off a murderer while in labor, Sarah said with something like awe. Emily, you're the toughest person I've ever met. I'm terrified, I admitted. That's what makes it brave. At the hospital, everything happened fast. They stabilized my arm wound, prepped me for delivery. My daughter's heartbeat was strong. She was ready. One more push, the doctor urged. I pushed with all the fear and rage and hope I'd been carrying for months. Pushed like my life depended on it. And then she was here. Harper Rose Hale, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Perfect. They placed her on my chest and I sobbed. She was real. She was alive. After everything, we'd both survived. Hi, baby girl, I whispered. Mommy fought so hard for you. Harper blinked up at me with dark eyes, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. In that moment, everything else fell away. The trial, Ryan, the fear, none of it mattered compared to this. Emily, Sarah appeared in the doorway. Sierra's in custody. She's confessing to everything, the previous murders, the plan to kill Ryan after you, all of it. She's giving prosecutors everything they need. And Ryan? His deal just fell apart. His lawyers can't blame Sierra anymore when she's testifying against him. The trial's back on. And with her testimony plus your recording, there's no way he walks. I looked down at Harper. Good, because I want her to grow up knowing her mother didn't let her father get away with trying to murder us. Over the next 2 weeks, the case came together perfectly. Sierra's full confession, the audio recording, the physical evidence, witnesses coming forward, Ryan's embezzlement documented in detail. The trial was scheduled, and this time, I'd be ready. The courthouse steps felt steeper than I remembered. Or maybe it was just the weight of carrying Harper in my arms while walking toward the man who tried to kill us both. Media surrounded the building, hundreds of reporters, cameras, protesters. Some carried signs supporting me. Others claimed I was lying. The case had divided the country. Sarah walked beside me, alert for any threats. Marcus was already inside, coordinating with courthouse security. Lisa Mitchell had prepared me for 3 days straight on what to expect. Remember, Lisa had said, Bradford will try to rattle you. He'll question your memory, your motives, your sanity. Don't let him. Just tell the truth. The truth, that seemed so simple until you had to say it in front of hundreds of people, with cameras broadcasting it nationwide, while your attempted murderer stared you down. We entered through a side door to avoid the worst of the media circus. Security was tight. After Sierra's attack, nobody was taking chances. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Overflow crowds in the hallway watching on screens. This trial was the biggest thing to hit Colorado in decades. I took my seat in the witness area. Harper was with a court-appointed guardian in a private room nearby, safe and secure. I'd nurse her during breaks. Then Ryan was let in. He wore an expensive suit despite being in custody. His hair was perfect. His expression carefully neutral. But when his eyes found mine, I saw the rage simmering underneath. Sierra was let in separately, shackled and orange jumpsuited. She looked broken. 3 weeks in county jail had stripped away at all her polish. She wouldn't look at Ryan or me. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Henderson. The trial began. The prosecution went first, laying out their case with brutal efficiency. The embezzlement, the insurance policies, the text messages, the GPS data, the audio recording. When they played my screams and Ryan's cold voice saying thanks for the payout, several jurors flinched. One older woman wiped tears from her eyes. Then came the witnesses. The hiker who'd heard screaming. The forensic expert who matched Sierra's shoes to the cliffside prints. The financial analyst who detailed Ryan's theft. And then, the prosecution calls Sierra Quinn. Sierra shuffled to the stand. She'd taken a plea deal, 30 years instead of life. In exchange, she'd tell everything. Miss Quinn, the prosecutor began, how did you meet Ryan Hale? At a business conference 2 years ago, I was working as a consultant. He was looking for someone to help with property acquisitions. Her voice was flat, dead. He was also looking for someone to help him eliminate his wife. The courtroom erupted. Judge Henderson banged her gavel. Did Mr. Hale specifically ask you to kill Emily Hale? Not at first. At first it was an affair. But 6 months in, he told me about the embezzlement. Said he needed Emily gone to cover it up. Asked if I knew anyone who could make it look like an accident. What did you say? I said I'd do it myself. I had experience. Experience murdering wealthy partners? Bradford shot to his feet. Objection. Prejudicial. Overruled. The witness may answer. Sierra looked at the jury. I've killed 3 men for their money. Daniel Crawford, Robert Marsh, Thomas Whitfield. All ruled accidents. All left me their fortunes. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. This was the first time she'd admitted to all 3 murders publicly. And Ryan Hale knew this? Yes, he thought it made me useful. He didn't realize I was planning to kill him next after Emily was gone. Objection! Bradford was on his feet again. Speculation about future intent. Your Honor, this establishes motive and pattern, the prosecutor countered. Overruled. Continue. The testimony went on for hours. Sierra detailed everything. The planning, the text messages, the push, Ryan's participation. She even revealed that Madison had been paid $50,000 to give false testimony at the preliminary hearing. When she finished, Sierra was led away. She never looked at Ryan. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Then the prosecutor said the words I'd been both dreading and waiting for. The prosecution calls Emily Carter Hale. I stood, walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. And then I looked at Ryan for the first time since taking the stand. Oh, Mrs. Hale, the prosecutor began gently, can you tell us what happened on the afternoon of September 15th? I took a breath. My husband took me to Red Canyon to murder me. As if the words hung in the air like a verdict. I kept my eyes on the jury, not Ryan. If I looked at him, I'd lose my courage. Tell us how you know it was planned, the prosecutor prompted. I saw the text messages on his phone before we left. Sierra saying she'd meet us there. Ryan's response, make it look accidental. I knew what they were going to do. I went anyway because I was stupid enough to think I was wrong. Why did you think they wanted you dead? Money. Ryan embezzled $3 million from his company. I discovered it while reviewing our finances. The IPO was his chance to cover the theft, but only if I wasn't around to report him. Plus the life insurance. $5 million payout for accidental death. I walked through every detail. The hike, the confrontation, Sierra's push, Ryan's words as I hung from that cliff. He said, and I quote, "Goodbye, Emily. Thanks for the payout." Then he told Sierra to make sure I didn't survive. How did you survive? I held on for 47 minutes until Park Ranger Sarah Morrison found me and pulled me to safety. The prosecutor played the audio recording again. My screams, Ryan's cold voice. The jury listened with expressions ranging from horror to anger. After you survived, what happened? I learned Ryan had declared me dead. He held a memorial service while I was in the ICU. He filed life insurance claims. He told the world I jumped due to pregnancy depression. He tried to erase me completely. Why didn't you come forward immediately? Because I knew he'd try again if he knew I was alive. I stayed hidden to protect myself and my daughter, and to build a case that would actually convict him. The prosecutor smiled slightly. How did that work out? Well, I'm here. He's in shackles, so pretty well. Scattered laughter rippled through the courtroom. Then it was Bradford's turn. Ryan's attorney approached with predatory confidence. Mrs. Hale, you suffered a severe head injury in your fall, correct? Correct. Concussion? Memory issues? Initially, yes. So your recollection of events might be flawed? No, I remember everything clearly. You claim Mr. Hale said specific words. But isn't it possible your traumatized brain filled in details that seem to make sense? I looked directly at Bradford. I didn't imagine his voice on that recording. I didn't imagine the text messages. I didn't imagine the embezzlement. And I sure didn't imagine Sierra Quinn confessing to everything. Bradford switched tactics. You and Mr. Hale were having marital problems, weren't you? Yes, because he was having an affair and planning to kill me. Or because you were paranoid and unstable. Objection, the prosecutor barked. Sustained, counsel rephrase. Bradford tried a different angle. Your best friend Madison testified you talked about wanting to jump, about ending it all. Madison was paid $50,000 by Ryan to lie. She's since recanted and is cooperating with prosecutors. That was news to Bradford. And then? I could see it in his face. Marcus had gotten Madison to flip just yesterday. Bradford recovered quickly. Mrs. Hale, isn't it true you wanted Mr. Hale's money? That you saw an opportunity to play victim and take everything he had? That's when I lost my patience with the polite witness routine. Mr. Bradford, your client pushed me off the cliff while I was pregnant. He watched me beg for help and walked away. He tried to erase me from existence. The only thing I want from Ryan Hale is to see him locked away where he can never hurt anyone again. The courtroom was silent. No further questions, Bradford said quietly. The trial continued for 3 more days. Expert witnesses, character witnesses, closing arguments. But everyone knew it was over. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. In the case of the state versus Ryan Hale, on the charge of attempted murder, how do you find? Guilty. Ryan's face went white. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder? Guilty. On the charges of embezzlement and fraud? Guilty on all counts. The courtroom exploded. Media rushed out to broadcast the verdict. Ryan sat frozen, staring straight ahead as his lawyer tried to speak to him. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Henderson looked down at Ryan with something like disgust. Mr. Hale, you attempted to murder your pregnant wife for money. You showed no remorse, no humanity, no decency. You were willing to erase a life and call it business. This court sentences you to life in prison without possibility of parole. Life, without parole. Ryan would die in prison. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. His expression was still angry, still defiant. He mouthed something. This time I didn't care what he said. He had no power over me anymore. Outside the courthouse, I gave my first public statement. Harper was in my arms, 6 weeks old and perfect. Someone asked me yesterday if I've forgiven Ryan, I said into the microphones. No, forgiveness is for people who are sorry. Ryan isn't sorry, he's just caught. But I have released him. He's in prison. I'm not. He wanted me dead. Instead, I'm more alive than ever. I looked directly into the cameras. If you're in an abusive relationship, if someone is isolating you or controlling you or making you doubt your own reality, please hear this. Document everything. Trust your gut. Get help. And know that leaving is the most dangerous time, so plan carefully. I fell 200 feet and survived. You can survive leaving too. The media asked more questions, but I was done. I had a daughter to raise, a life to rebuild, a future to create. 3 months later, I stood in a small apartment in downtown Denver. Not a penthouse. Just a modest 2-bedroom with good light and secure locks. Sarah stopped by with groceries. Marcus brought files for the civil suit against Ryan's estate to recover assets. Lisa helped me set up a legal consulting practice working with domestic violence survivors. My old life was gone, but my new life was better. Smaller, quieter, mine. Harper slept in her crib, peaceful and safe. I watched her breathe, still amazed that we'd both survived. There was a knock at the door. Marcus, with coffee and a cautious smile. Over the months, something had shifted between us. Not romance, not yet, but potential. Friendship deepening into something more. How are you? He asked. Getting there. Some days are harder than others. Nightmares, PTSD, trust issues. I accepted the coffee gratefully. But I'm getting there. You're the strongest person I know. I'm a person who refused to die for a lie. I looked at Harper. She deserves to grow up knowing her mother fought for her. That's all I did. Fight. Marcus stayed for dinner. We talked about ordinary things. Work, weather, plans for the weekend. Normal conversation between two people who'd been through hell and come out the other side. After he left, I sat in the quiet apartment and wrote in the journal my therapist suggested. Processing, healing, moving forward. Ryan wanted to erase me. Instead, he gave me a story worth telling, and I was telling everyone. At support group the next week, I held Harper and listened to other women's stories. Abuse, escape, survival. We were all fighting the same battle in different ways. When it was my turn to speak, I shared my truth. Not for revenge, not for attention, but so other women would know they weren't alone. The system failed me in a lot of ways, I said, but I didn't fail myself. I survived. I fought. I won. That's what I want you to remember. You're stronger than you know, braver than you think, and you deserve to be safe. Harper made a small sound. I smiled down at her. This is Harper Rose. She's the reason I held on to that cliff branch. She's why I stayed hidden, why I testified, why I'll keep telling this story until every woman knows she can survive too. The women in the circle nodded. Several wiped tears. We all carried scars, but we were all still here. That night, as I rocked Harper to sleep, I thought about Ryan in his prison cell. No designer suits, no penthouse views, no freedom. He'd gambled everything on my death and lost. I kissed Harper's forehead and whispered the promise I made every night. You're safe, you're loved, and nobody will ever hurt you like they tried to hurt us. Mommy promises. Outside my window, Denver glowed with lights. Somewhere out there, other women were fighting their own battles. Other survivors were finding their strength. My story was finished, but theirs were just beginning. And that's what made everything worth it. Not revenge. Not justice, though that was sweet, but knowing that by surviving, by speaking up, by refusing to be erased, I'd given other women permission to do the same. Ryan wanted me dead and forgotten. Instead, I was alive and impossible to ignore, and that was the best revenge of all. If Emily's story taught us anything, it's that survival isn't just about holding on to that cliff branch. It's about refusing to be erased. Now, before you go, I need to ask you something. If this story made you feel anything, if it made you angry or inspired or just grateful you're not married to Ryan Hale, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Emily's situation. And if you think someone in your life needs to hear this story, share it with them. Because stories like this, they save lives. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Because next week's story is about a woman who discovered her husband had an entire second family. And trust me, you won't want to miss what she did about it. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there.